listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I am your host. I am your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Digital Broadcast Network, and Digital Satellite Network. Worldwide toll-free, 800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone 724, 365, as well as to the live feed, which again is Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight at www.xzoneradiotv.com. It's Friday, November the 20th, and 1 week ago tonight, there was the terror attack in Paris, France. Well, Friday doesn't seem to be a very good day when it comes to peace and quietness throughout the world, because earlier today there was an attack in Africa at a Radisson hotel. I guess, X-Zone Nation, we just have to keep our thoughts positive and just, stand behind the men and women, whether they're here on homeland or in a theater somewhere, protecting freedom and democracy, and send them your love and your prayers. My guest this hour is Major Dr. Doug ROKKE, and usually we always talk to Doug about depleted uranium. And just to give you a bit of a background on Doug, DU contaminates land, causes ill health and cancers among soldiers using the weapons, the armies they target, and the civilians, leading to birth defects in children. Now, Doug ROKKE, ex-director of the Pentagon's Depleted Uranium Project, a former professor of environmental science at Jacksonville University, and one-time U.S. Army colonel who was tasked by the U.S. Department of Defense with the post-First Gulf War depleted uranium desert cleanup, said of DU was a war crime. And, we'll go into this later. But, Doug, first of all, welcome back, my friend. Always great talking to you, Doug. And I have to ask you, as a former member of the military, what do you think can be done to fight ISIS?
Nothing. I mean, we're looking at an entire concept and idea. I mean, all of the intervention going back to World War I and before that the U.S. and French and the British have done in the Middle East to control all of the resources and take over the nations have aggravated a situation beyond comprehension. Then we went in and we totally destroyed their infrastructure, set all kinds of sanctions on against them, destroyed and killed and maimed. I mean, main lead story I read just when I checked online before I came here, the U.S. is totally admitting killing civilians in Iraq.
Oh, no.
I mean, how bad can it get? So what you're looking at is an entire uprising throughout the region, not one group from one area, but are saying this is enough is enough. And they're highly educated, highly motivated. They're armed to the teeth, and we have to understand we gave them the weapon systems they're using against us. I'm going to repeat, we gave them the weapon systems they're using against us. We trained them, and they got fed up with everything that we've been doing, the French have been doing, from day one. I mean, you got to remember, Syria was a French colony. French took total control of Syria until they gave it freedom, back at the after World War II, and then still maintained it after that.
Is that why there's so much animosity between the Syrians and the French?
Well, sure. I mean, this stuff, again, go back and read. And I want to read this directly from the CIA World Fact Book, okay? It's the only way to understand this. Following World War I, France acquired a mandate over a northern portion of the former Ottoman Empire, province of Syria. The French administered the area of Syria and granted independence in 1946. The new country lacked political stability, however, and experienced a series of military coups during its first decades. Syria united with Egypt in February of 1958 to become the United Arab Republic. In September of 1961, the two entities separated and the Syrian Arab Republic was established. In November 1970, Hafez Assad, member of the Socialist Ba'ath Party and the minority of things, seized power in a bloodless coup and brought stability and everything to the country. In 1967, after the Arab-Israeli War, Syria lost the Golan Heights to Israel. During the 1990s, Syria and Israel held occasional peace talks over its return. Following the death of President Assad, his son, Bashar al-Assad, the current one, was approved as president by popular referendum in July of 2000. Syrian troops stationed in Lebanon since 1976 in an ostensible peacekeeping role were withdrawn in April of 2005. During the July-August 2006 conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, Syria placed the military forces on alert but did not intervene on behalf of its ally Hezbollah. In May of 2007, Bashar al-Assad was elected to his second term as president. End quote. This is directly from the CIA World Fact Book.
So we've got. Actually, are we seeing throughout history? France has been, throughout Northern Africa and throughout the Middle East. So are we seeing now the terror groups like Al Qaeda and ISIS taking revenge, or is this part of what the Islamic State wants to do? Is to bring the United States, bring France, bring Germany, bring Russia to Syria to have what they call the final battle?
No, I think what you're looking at is the same thing. When we entered the Gulf War in February 1991, we didn't overthrow Saddam. We knew that he was holding the region in total stability. And the same thing with Assad in there. He was the elected president of the nation, but we have to come through. And this all comes on down to the Syria-Iran-Iraq gas pipeline. And that, again, and different things. And the idea was, again, Syria was working with Iran to bring out a pipeline. And this come from the Iranian port of Asaluya near the South Pars gas field in the Persian Gulf. And then it come all the way across over to Damascus and Syria, and then ultimately to extend the pipeline to Lebanon's port would be delivered to all the markets. So again, it's working against the oil. So it's control of the oil pipelines. Back in, 2008, fall 2008, when we went over to the United Nations dealing with all the health and environmental effects on children and all over in the war in the Middle East, I met with Assad, one-on-one. I mean, I wasn't alone, obviously.
Right,
we were with him. And the discussion we had there was dealing with all the contamination that's all over the eastern portion of his nation as a result of all the DU and everything else and the destruction that was wrought. So again, it's just been a nightmare. So now what we see is an uprising throughout all of this stuff by ISIL or whatever you have. They're fed up with Western intervention that's been going on for many, many years. And it's not any one group. And so when the U.S. says we're going to go and fight and say, okay, I got this county or this area and I'll fight them and I'll raise my flag over it, you can raise your flag over an area all day long, but it doesn't matter if the people don't want you there and they're fed up with you. It's sort of like, think about where you live and where I live. If the foreign military came into where you live out there on the West Coast or came to where I was, we'd be absolutely bonkers on them.
Sure.
And there's no way to stop it. So we've done the same thing. And I have to understand, we've killed, destroyed, maimed, and everything without provocation, without justification against somebody that's never attacked, has no capability to do it. And now you're seeing everything come back. I wouldn't label these terrorists at all. This is war. I mean, it's honest to God war. And you're dealing with everybody in a region that's fed up with everything.
Yeah, you call it war. I call it war. The Vatican calls it war. The French Prime Minister calls it war. But the President of the United States doesn't acknowledge it as radical Islam or that this, in fact, is a war.
Well, that's his choice, isn't it? I mean, we have to understand, however this all started, and we can look at all of the events that have transpired up to the beginning. With French and British thing, again, this goes back to the Sykes-Picot Treaty back in 1916, 1917 that set up total control. And then the U.S. jumped in. So U.S. and British and French have controlled the whole region from Afghanistan all the way through Iran, all the way into Iraq and the whole area forever and ever and ever.
Right.
Just stealing their resources, and then all of a sudden everybody said, wait a minute, we're going to nationalize this stuff. We're going to keep it for ourselves. Yeah, we'll sell it to you, but we're going to make a profit. And that ended that whole thing. And then you have to remember all the weapon systems. I mean, one of the things that got me so busy during Desert Storm is we have to understand the United States and Canada and England and the United States deliberately sent Iraq the chemical and biological weapons to use on the Iranians and the Iraqi Kurds, which they did. Then they used them on us, and then we blew it all up and zapped all of us anyhow. And now, as you know from the latest revelation, the U.S. military and everybody is totally disregarding all the environmental contamination, the requirements to clean it up, and the requirements to provide medical care. That's brand new. You got that right now. I sent it to you a little while ago.
Doug, stand by for a sec, please. Welcome back, everyone. It's Friday, November the 20th. It is 11 minutes past the hour of 8 in the eastern part of the United States and Canada. We're just getting breaking news from our newsroom right now. The Belgian government has just issued a release saying serious and imminent terror threat in Brussels. Once again, the Belgian government has just issued a release stating that there is a serious and imminent terror threat in Brussels. The people in the X-Zone newsroom will keep us advised of what is going on, and as soon as there's any breaking news, we will get it back to you. Sorry about that, Doug.
That goes to reinforce what we were saying.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to understand, when you get everybody torqued off and they start moving, and then everybody is fleeing the region, they're fleeing the region, there's no way to sort out who's going through and who's going in.
Yep.
And everybody, you have to understand, everybody is torqued off. And as a consequence, when they get to an area, they're going to do whatever they can against the individuals that they see as responsible for the nightmare.
What about the big topic of the day in the U.S. Capitol, where with the immigration of Syrian refugees into the United States, and Canada is also bringing in Syrian refugees? Should this be put on hold until there are better checks and balances in place as far as national security is concerned, or should we just, use the existing vetting system that we have now and allow them in?
Absolutely not. We need a total moratorium and set the borders up and don't let them in. There's no way to vet anybody to know who the person is and what they're going to do. And as much intervention as we've done, as much as we've destroyed, killed, and contaminated, everybody is torqued off, and it doesn't matter what their age is. You have to understand, you might have few that might want to come in to get out of the situation, but we still destroyed their home. Well, as a result, they have to leave to come. And we have to come down to the fundamentals. And again, this is the same thing. What would we do in our area if some foreign military did exactly the same thing, resulting in the same consequences, and they wanted to grab all of our natural resources?
Well, let me just go back in history a bit and see if you can help me understand this then, Doug. Taking what is happening in Europe based on the history of the United States and other nations in the Middle East and the actions that were taken, how come the Japanese, where we annihilated two cities using atomic weaponry, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, have not committed any terrorist acts against the United States or its allies?
We rebuilt the country again. Look what MacArthur did when he totally rebuilt the country and everything else, and it's an ongoing thing. So Japan doesn't have any resources that the U.S. needs or the West needs.
So you mean the only
reason... resources. They need our resources to sustain. I mean, that was part of the thing that developed World War II. When we cut off all the Japanese resources, then it expanded out.
So you mean if there was no oil in the Middle East, there'd be no wars?
I don't think so.
Wow.
I mean, we have to go back to the Sykes-Picot Treaty, which was set up again to do all of this at World War One.
Doug, as a member of the military who has given so much, and Doug, I can only imagine what you have been through and other brothers and sisters that you have stood beside and with those who have fallen have been through. Do you think that putting boots on the ground in Syria and the Middle East right now would be of any consequence that would lead to victory?
No victory. There's no victory to win, because you can destroy an area, control an area, but you'll never gain the people to love you or want to do anything, because it's not our nation, it's not our thing, it's not our deal. I'm coming back and coming to. When I was as an Army intelligence officer, when I did this stuff for the brigade, I have to think like they do, try to understand where they're coming from and what they're doing in order to figure out how to put defenses up and protect ourselves. So that's where I'm coming from. And there is no way, because, I mean, right now we got special forces teams in Syria right now. By what right? I mean, and all the talk about overthrowing, Assad, he was a properly elected leader of the government. He might not do what we want to say as if we're his daddy. It's sort of like we're to the point where, we're your daddy, and if you don't do what we say, how we say, when we say it, then we're going to spank you. Well, spanking is we blow them away.
Yeah. How feasible is it that ISIS could get their hands on some depleted uranium?
They already have. We gave it to them.
We gave it to them.
Under the Captured Equipment Project, the guys that became ISIS, when we brought all the different groups in Iraq and Syria and Turkey and everything, we started providing them weapons with this, at the end of Desert Storm, I was involved in that, the Captured Equipment Project. And then the same thing happened currently with Operation Iraqi Freedom. We started arming all the different groups. So they just took their group stuff that they had and used it. Hey, we gave it to them before. And that's what scares me with the chem bio stuff. We absolutely have to understand we gave it to them before. They used it on us. They used it on the Iraqis, the Iranians. They used it on everybody, and everybody knows that. And then we blew it up and destroyed all the stuff. But then, hey, guess what? These guys are smart people. They can make their own.
So are you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, that the United States military left munitions in these places where ISIS could actually have in their possession depleted uranium and other weapons of mass destruction?
Well, conventional weapons, absolutely. Artillery weapons, missiles, anything, all kinds of machine guns. Yeah, absolutely. And we gave it to them because, again, with all the different groups we were arming to help us fight in Iraq, we just gave them the weapons, and then they turned on us.
But how come mainstream media doesn't talk about this?
Why would they?
Well, isn't it the right of the American people to know what exactly they are really up against besides a bunch of towel-wearing desert wanderers, as most people think they are, who are now getting a lot of attention because of their terrorist acts? Shouldn't the public also know that they have military-grade weaponry that was left there by the United States?
And they were trained by us. I mean, see, that's the whole thing. It's nuts, but you have to come down. One of the things that I ran into when we used a depleted uranium, and I had to clean up in the Gulf, and everybody started to get sick when we caused all the environmental problems with destroying all of the 105 chemical and biological sites that Iraq had. Made that decision in December of 1990. It's in Schwarzkopf's autobiography. It does in Hideki Hero on page 390. So we messed everything up all over the area. And then we walked away, and then we don't provide medical care to our own military. We don't provide medical care to the coalition. We don't provide medical care to the families. And then we sure as heck don't provide medical care to all the non-combatants in these nations that we're supposedly protecting. And then we kill the enemy, so-called anybody that opposes our occupation. I mean, you have to come down to it. What right do we have to go in there to begin? They never attacked us, had no capability to attack us. And now we're seeing all kinds of little small unit combat operations, there's no way to protect yourself against them. It's totally impossible.
Well, isn't it the Isn't it the law in the United States that Congress has to declare war or vote on declaring war before the president can take the actions that he's already taken without the approval of Congress?
We haven't done that since Vietnam, have we?
So basically, the United States is fighting an illegal war or taking illegal action against a sovereign nation.
Well, sure. I mean, you know, when you look at the War Powers Act and you talk to Francis Boyle, Ramsey Clark, and the other ones that wrote it, you know, well, that's what they tell us. I mean, you have to understand it. Did the nation have a direct attack in the United States, any capability to overthrow our government or do anything? No, they didn't. Do they have an Air Force or a Navy capable of attacking? No, they don't. Do we have now, because we're allowing everybody to go all over creation, is it a small army unit can go in there and do destruction in a heartbeat? And you can't stop it. You can't protect yourself. How are you gonna stop a small unit from operating? You know, our Green Beret guys are the superb at doing that. You never see them; they're in and out. So, you know, same with Blue Light and all the other ones.
Doug, what's your opinion of the Iranian nuclear deal?
Iran never had any capability to get nuclear weapons and anything like that. The facilities are huge, and all that stuff is just smoke and mirrors all the way around. Always has been.
But what's the reason for the smoke and mirrors now? Is it just the oil again?
Well, sure, it's the oil control of Iran. I mean, go back and, you know, we can send you stuff, but best thing to do on understanding Iran is go to the Smithsonian Institution report a few years ago where they talked about all the basics for what happened into Iran. I mean, I could send it to you. It's to totally understand what the British and the U.S. did into Iran. And the same thing we did. I mean, back at the sometime when the Shah was involved, we were arming him, his secret police, and allowing him to do everything, and they got fed up with it.
All right, so we've got the Syrians who are really pissed off at the French because of what happened in history. We have the United States and a few of the members who are allies of the states, including Canada, who are over there sticking their nose into the business of the Syrians, and they're really getting pissed off about it. What about what happened with Korea? How is that going to bite us in the butt?
Well, I mean, what scares me more is, you know, we're getting everything going, and okay, we decided to go into war and preemptive war and attack these nations, claiming they were going to attack us. Not at all. Now we're going all over claiming we're going to attack these people. What's to stop China or India or Pakistan or North Korea or Russia from launching a full attack on us? I mean, right now we're sitting there on the border where, you know, Russian jets and U.S. jets and everybody else are fighting it out, and French jets are fighting it out in Syria. When do we get in a firefight with each other and it all goes up?
Who's the number one threat to the United States right now?
Not changed in my history, Russia.
Is it possible that this conflict or this war with ISIS would actually bring the Russians and the Americans closer together?
No.
No, eh? Do you think there's going to be terrorist attacks here on the homeland?
Well, I wouldn't call them terrorist attacks. I'd call them a small unit military operations. And if we don't secure the borders and prevent the people from getting in there, and right now the borders are wide open, it's could be bad. And nobody's prepared. I mean, all the training we did and did that before, nobody's there. There's nobody prepared.
You know, there's a lot of talk about what's going on in France and Syria these days with the candidates both on the Republican side and the Democratic side. Who do you think has the strongest true sense of what America needs?
I have no idea.
No.
I mean, you know, Bernie Sanders is the only one I personally know.
What's he like?
Incredible.
Yeah?
Honest as the day is long. Dedicated to, he's the only one in the House and the Senate totally dedicated today to protecting all of us that served in the military and ensuring we get medical care. I mean, he was instrumental in getting the VA, you know, trying to get the VA cleaned up and getting all those jerks fired and getting accountability within the Department of Defense. I mean, I love him. He's incredible. I've known him, I don't know, when did I meet him? 1998, 1997, 98, something like that.
Is it true that the head honchos at the Veterans Affair who are responsible for the schmozzle the VA is in right now are still working there?
Oh, yeah, the people that were responsible for all the nasty stuff are still around, and they just got massive bonuses.
How the hell can that happen, Doug? I'm in the wrong business.
There's no accountability. You have to understand. The decision was made a long time ago to disavow any connection between all of the war and the consequent health effects to avoid all the liability, not only for the U.S. military and the coalition forces, but the so-called enemy that we trashed. And we trashed God's environment. That's why the latest story that has popped up on Army Times here a week ago, you got a copy of it, totally confirmed the U.S. military totally disregarded their requirements to identify contamination, report the contamination, put it in the troops' medical records, and provide medical care.
You know, Doug, I still have the first notes I took the very first time you and I talked I guess it's 12 or 15 years ago. And this is a quote that you said, "There's a moral point to be made here. The war is about Iraq possessing illegal weapons of mass destruction, yet we are using weapons of mass destruction ourselves." You added, "Such double standards are repellent. The latest use of depleted uranium in the current conflict on Friday when the American A-10 tank buster plane fired a DU shell, killing one British soldier and injuring 3 others in a quote-unquote friendly fire incident. According to a August 2002 report by the UN Subcommission, laws which are breached by the use of DU shells include the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Charter of the United Nations, the Genocide Convention, the Convention Against Torture, the 4 Geneva Conventions of 1949, the Conventional Weapons Convention of 1980, and the Hague Conventions of 1899 and 1907, which expressly forbid employing a poison or poisoned weapons and arms, projectiles, or materials calculated to cause unnecessary suffering. All of these laws are designed to spare civilians from unwarranted suffering in armed conflicts." How come, with all those violations, nobody has held the U.S. accountable?
Because we're the God and we claim the divine right of kings, and there's nobody that'll stand up against it. I mean, I got a problem. On Veterans Day last week, here, Veterans Day in the United States, Armistice Day all over, again, World War I armistice. But November is that. Ended up on our radio show with one of my guys that I thought we had got medical corps, friendly fire in an Abrams shot up by another Abrams, friendly fire with DU. And I found out his medical care had totally collapsed and he'd gone down to nothing and his wife had to take care of him. Oh. And then I found out on Sunday, the other day, got another one of my buddies. They're trying to figure out where they're going to do the cancer surgery. They're going to do in Indianapolis, or right here in Champaign. And they're arguing over where they're going to do it and who's going to cover it. But they don't care. They don't care.
Doug, stand by. You and I have to take a commercial break, my friend. Great talking to you, Doug. Exo Nation Doug ROKKE is our special guest. He is one of the true crusaders in helping so many veterans who have been struck down by the use of depleted uranium munitions. He's a fighter for the rights of the veterans. And you know what, Exo Nation? They deserve every possible benefit that we can give them, whether you're in Canada like I am or whether you're in the United States. The veterans are the backbone of democracy. They are the backbone of freedom. You know, it's nice for everybody to sit in Ottawa and in Washington and dictate what they're going to do. But it's the men and women of the armed forces who risk their lives for our freedom, our democracy, and our way of living. We'll be back on the other side as we continue with Doug ROKKE here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our main radio website where you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My name is Rob McConnell, and if I sound pissed off, that's because I am. Here you've got the United States of America, who have broken so many laws. They claim other countries break laws. They've broken laws, and yet no one is holding them accountable for what they've done to so many. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
Jeff Gilson didn't go out looking for adventure, danger, or the answers to most of the controversial political intrigues of the past 30 years. But he found all three when he began investigating the mysterious death of his close friend, Margaret Thatcher's favorite speechwriter. Just an ordinary guy living in a small, sleepy suburb 20 miles outside of London, Jeff's questions provoked a powerful response on both sides of the Atlantic. He was shot at, warned off by the CIA, and formed a close bond with one of Israel's most notorious intelligence officers. Relive Jeff's gripping adventure in his fast-paced book, Maggie's Hammer. Peel away the layers of establishment deception and discover, as Jeff did, that his friend was an assassin with British intelligence, that Great Britain has been America's secret hitman for the past 30 years, and that Princess Diana was not the target in that Parisian tunnel. All of this and more when you visit www.maggieshammer.com and find the link to buying this explosive book online. More and more ordinary people feel they no longer have control of their lives. Jeff fought back. He asked the difficult questions. He set out to redesign his own destiny, and you can do the same using Maggie's Hammer as your guide. Don't waste a moment. Buy it today. Visit www.maggieshammer.com. What if Jesus came back now and insisted that we listen to him? How would the world be different if Christians really followed the Gospels? For 2,000 years, we've been practicing a religion. Now it's finally time to get it right. Read Liberating Jesus, new from Roberta Grimes. Meet the Jesus you never knew. Roberta uses afterlife evidence and biblical analysis to prove that Jesus is exactly right. Learning the lessons that he came to teach is the reason we are born at all. Roberta says he has come back now to insist that we actually listen to him so we can begin to use his teachings to unite and transform the world. Liberating Jesus wherever books are sold. Jesus has the answers, and it's not too late. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com.
Good real estate websites are not just about showing listings, but offering visitors valuable information about neighborhoods, market statistics, tips, and personal insights. Luckily, you will find that on Roost, but you won't on many other real estate websites in Budapest. That's why we created Roost. Roost is a website with tailored results for the foreign investor, curated by Hungarian-loving expats who found their home abroad and decided to roost in Budapest. Let Roost help you get started on the right foot. Whether you intend to live, work, play, retire, or simply invest abroad, Roost offers all types of properties in Budapest, from affordable studios to luxury homes. From neighborhood insights like where to grab a great coffee or how to buy property, our team of local experts can answer your questions and speak to the direct concerns of a foreign investor. Buying foreign property is an exciting and complex adventure. It can also be very time-consuming and costly if you don't have the best information and resources at hand. Roost provides professional real estate services and assistance to an international clientele of foreign property investors and rental apartment owners in Budapest. For more information on Roost, visit their website at www.roost.co. That's www.rooste.co.
First of all, let's start off by getting the following understood. I am not a psychic, medium, channel, intuitive, soothsayer, nor the practitioner of any art of divination. I am a Canadian, a broadcaster, a journalist, a publisher, and a realist. I tried warning people about the refugee problem with on-air commentaries and videos that I had produced, but no one listened. I was called a racist, and every name under the sun. Well, look what happened in Paris on Friday the 13th, 2015. The X Zone was the first media outlet to openly make the Friday 13th connection, and was the first media outlet to broadcast the fact that ISIS had claimed responsibility for the terror in the attacks on Paris. This is war. I hate to say it, but it is going to get worse before it gets better. My heart and prayers are with those who have lost family, friends, and countrymen and women in this war that ISIS has openly declared, again, against the Western world. The time for talking is over. We must support France and other free countries against Islam. We must close our borders to Syrian refugees. Again, we need to give refugees a safe zone in Syria by a military coalition where they can live and be protected and supported by the United Nations until the time comes when ISIS and their supporters and sympathizers have been wiped off the face of this earth, at which time the refugees from Syria can return to their homeland. The military and intelligence services must be given all the resources they need to fight this fight. It is time we stopped turning the other cheek and started fighting fire with fire. This is no time to be over-politically correct. For the X Zone radio and TV show and the X Chronicles newspaper, I am Rob McConnell.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
Welcome back, everyone. Doug Rocky's our very special guest this hour. It's always a great pleasure and honor having you on the show, Doug. Thanks very much for taking time.
You know, Rob, you just had the commercial, and when you were coming out, we said something before, that our military and what we've been involved in fighting for our freedoms.
Yeah.
You know, we were back, in the 1700s. But the only nation that's had the capability to suspend our government or through our freedoms that we prize so thing is England. No other nation has had any capability to do it. They've not done. I mean, what we're fighting for is economic domination and resource control. That's what it's about. And that's, it's part of that myth that's bringing out. And then the other idea somehow that ISIS, or in this thing with the Taliban or whatever, these are some foreign entity or some group that all of a sudden just came into the area. It's, I would suggest they're just like you and me. They're people that are fed up with everything that's been going on.
But Doug, I may be fed up with the government, but I'm certainly not going to take an AK-47, go down the street, and start blasting people that I don't know. Like there has to be a line drawn here. Like I don't consider them as normal people. If they want to do things, there's a right way of doing it. Don't try and shove a Quran down my throat because I'm not going to let you. Don't tell me not to say Merry Christmas because it offends you. Too bloody bad. It's Merry Christmas. They just seem to want to take over. They're like locusts on this planet, taking whatever they can.
Yeah, but that's what we've been doing. They're not coming over here and doing that to us. Nothing's happened.
Well, look what's happening in Europe.
Well, what's happening in Europe is you've got small unit military operations coming back in retaliation for all the stuff that's been happening. So when you open the borders and all these people come charging in there, they're going to go, yeah, I got an opportunity to go up there and I'm going to attack them. I'm out of here. So it's a different mindset. See, this is where I'm trying to come. I'm trying to put into the mind of the enemy in order to protect and save us. And you have to try to understand where they're coming from and what they're looking for. I mean, when year after year, time after time, we've gone in and we've killed and we've maimed and we destroyed and we contaminated their home, and they had nothing but just wanted to live their life where they were at. No capability or even desire to come over here and do anything else. We wanted their stuff. So now we twist it all around and ship it the other way. And I've heard, I mean, all kinds of weird comments and stuff that I never saw, I mean, or had any indication that that's the way it is, but that's how you frighten people.
But that's
how you scare people.
Does that justify what they are doing today? Does that justify them?
I didn't say it justified it at all. And it doesn't justify it, but does it? What right do we have to continue to bomb, destroy, and kill?
We don't have that right, Doug.
Bingo. And so they're looking at it saying there's a double standard. You're claiming that you can do this, okay, and then I didn't do anything to you, and now you've done this all to me over and over and over again for 100 years, and now I'm fed up. You have to come from a different mindset, the mindset of going, hey, we're peace, love, and everything. If we were peace loving, we wouldn't have invaded all of these nations and killed and destroyed and maimed and walked away and refused medical care for those nations. We did it, refused to clean up the environment, and then do the same thing to our own military forces that we sent in there. And when our military forces go in there and all of a sudden they realize, wait a minute, I was told these guys come to get me. They had no capability to come after me. They're not interested in it. And I just killed them. And now we have PTSD is going crazy. It's a moral injury. It's not a mental illness from fear and terror.
But when somebody joins the armed forces, Doug, don't they realize that this is an occupational hazard, that they may have to go to war, they may have to kill?
Well, sure, but it has to be justified and legal again, and it has to be against a viable enemy that has capability to actually attack us and overthrow our government or suspend our government or rights.
Well, you know, I remember watching the news coverage on Desert Storm, and I remember seeing Iraqis in tanks, Iraqis in shooting at the coalition that was there. Is it the fact that in your opinion, that we shouldn't have been there?
To begin with, I mean, Desert Storm was a charade where we allowed Kuwait to tap Iraq's pipelines, and then set up the whole thing. And we told the King Fahd, was the king of Saudi Arabia, and I worked with him, that the Iraqis were arrayed along his border, ready to invade into Saudi Arabia, and they never were. They never were there. We had all this stuff that was put all over the world about all these atrocities in Kuwait, and we never found them. You know, and all the stuff was set up in order to get the U.S. military forces to occupy the Middle East, to get control of the oil and the resources and get a U.S. military force in place.
But it failed.
Absolutely it failed. It failed totally. We've not won anything or done anything. We have no capability to win any war or battle there. It's impossible. You can go over there and seize the terrain and raise the flag over it, but so what? The people don't want you there. They have no desire at all, and we don't provide any benefit to them whatsoever.
But look look throughout Europe, Doug. The Polish, the French didn't want the German occupation armies there, but they were there. So how can we say it's not right what happened during Desert Fox, but it was all right what happened with Germany and Poland, Germany and France, and other parts of Europe that Germany conquered?
Well, you know, you're looking at a thing where the Germany deliberately went in and conquered the whole thing, and then we had the Holocaust, which was, I think it was probably 8 or 9, maybe 10 years old the first time I saw the pictures. And, you know, my family, you know, uncles that went in there were there and saw it. Okay,
sure.
Horrific, no two ways about it.
Right.
There's absolutely no way between to separate this thing out. This has nothing to do with giving freedom to the Iraqis or freedom to the Iranians or freedom to the Syrians or freedom to the Afghanis. It has nothing to do with that. Because if we did, then when we get in and overthrow the supposed government, we would have just walked out and said, okay, up to you on how you establish your government. We're not going to intervene anymore. And we put puppet governments in place in every one of these areas, and that's what we want to do right now in Syria.
But Syria is a threat.
To who?
To the world.
With what?
Terrorism. Terrorists.
No. Syria is not itself. Syria is fighting an internal civil war beyond comprehension that was set up and established by the Turks and the French and the Americans.
So why are we fighting in Syria then?
The oil and the natural gas and the pipeline coming from Iran across Syria to the coast.
Doug, I'm looking at the big picture and I'm saying to myself, that just can't be it.
It's all about, when I started figuring out it's about economic greed and everything else in control, and it scared me. Because I bought into this stuff, and we did this stuff, and, Vietnam, we bombed and blew, and we found out it was all hoax. We found out Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. And then we did all this stuff, and it all fell apart, and nothing changed. And now the nation's thriving. And then we do all over the place. So then we went in, the same thing, we went in there and we claimed that Iraq was ready to overthrow Saudi Arabia, and they weren't. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did go into Kuwait, absolutely, but again, Kuwait had been stealing their oil, which we set up. And then we went in and claimed they had chemical weapons, which we had given to them, and then we destroyed, so we attacked them again. Totally destroyed and killed everybody. Absolute horror beyond comprehension. We did the same thing in Afghanistan over the Unicol pipeline that the Taliban refused to go along with.
Dougie, I just got this in from our news team. Saudi Prince Al-Walid Tabal, a senior member of the Saudi monarchy, says he'll pledge his $32 billion to advance the Islamization of America.
What?
To advance the Islamization. Islamization.
Welcome and congratulations. I mean, he's, when you look at this stuff, you got all the different parties in there. I mean, when we work with the Saudi royal family, it got presented to King Fahd. We worked with King Abdullah to protect them from the known NBC threat, again, because we gave it to them, and we were setting everything up. And it was just understanding, but at the same time, we were understanding that they would turn on us in a heartbeat, because the minute they got the sense that we're trying to overthrow or take their government or take their oil or the resources or control them, as if we're the big daddy, it was all going to end.
So what does this tell you, Doug, as someone who knows their way of thinking, having been over there for several years, that a Saudi prince is going to pledge $32 billion to advance the cause of Islam and the takeover of America by Islam?
I didn't see where they said they have no capability to take us over. Zero, nada. They have no military, they have no Air Force, they have no Navy, they have no capability to overthrow our governments at all. Nothing, nada. Doesn't exist. They don't have it.
What would happen if there was a dirty bomb that went off in Washington, D.C.?
It'd be a friggin' mess.
And you'd have no power? If they brought down the electrical grid by either an EMF or by hacking into a computer system, but
they're still not going to overthrow the government. The government's going to function because they're going to pull them out and they'll go into the caves, and then they keep working. They have no capability to do it. They have no Air Force. They have no Navy. They have no thing for a massive stuff.
But are we being naive when they say that they don't have a Navy, they don't have an Army, so they can't do it?
No, we're not being naive. That's realization of what the heck is going on. Small unit tactics, absolutely all over creation, and that's what they're going to use. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they're using small unit tactics, but we're having massive airstrikes. I mean, look what happened a few weeks ago. We deliberately and willfully attacked and destroyed a hospital, Doctors Without Borders, killed the doctors, the nurses, and the patients, and said, "Oh, that's okay. Forgive us. Give me a break."
Well, what about 9/11? That was conducted without armies or Air Force.
9/11 was conducted by the Army and the Air Force.
Oh, come on, Doug. You really don't believe that the United States government was behind the attack on the Twin Towers?
You ever talk? The guys that went in and did the rescue in Twin Towers were my guys. We had the first explosions in the sub basement 3 and 4. They were loading the casualties on the ambulance when the first aircraft hit. They started going up and doing the rescues and everything. There was no fires or anything in the lower floors below, like the 90th floor or anything. And then all of a sudden, the explosives started coming out. I mean, when you look at the thermite and thermate and everything else, and the fact that there were, fires like that had gone on, there's no way a building like that could come down.
All right, Doug. So
when you look at the Pentagon, you look at the same thing and look at the Pentagon Building Performance Report, and you see that they couldn't put an aircraft into a 7-foot vertical space, and yet they claim that's what happened. But the photographs, the direct photographic evidence and direct evidence individuals in there contradict the official story, because we had to implement the invasion plans that we put in place in the 1990s.
Doug, with all the firemen, all the policemen that went in trying to help so many people, how could
those were my guys.
How could a conspiracy of this magnitude be perpetrated without a leak?
It's a small unit. It's a small unit operation. It doesn't take a huge group.
So, did George Bush know about this?
I don't think George himself knew about it. I think that people within the administration, all of it, and then when you look at it and everything else, who's the capable of acquiring and using the type of munitions, that's a very limited group. And the idea, it doesn't take a large group. You can take a 12-man team and do the whole thing in a heartbeat, and nobody will know it. I mean, when you look at this stuff really happen, how did a building this huge with the huge members and everything come down in 45 minutes when there was no fires or anything below the 80th, 90th floor? Nothing. And all of a sudden, boom, it just collapsed totally into dust and went to rubble.
Then why would the people of America accept the explanation that these towers were brought down by 2 jets that were commandeered by what? How many men all told? 15 men, 16 men?
Yeah, I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
Just because we got to believe in everything and what we're told, we'll believe what the government says, and you've got to believe that we're doing everything right. But it was physically impossible. And the same thing in the Pentagon. You pull up the Pentagon Building Performance Report and look at the photographs, and you can see clearly in the photographs and the other photographs we acquired in the military intel, there was no jet, nothing happened. In fact, my friends were brought out of the hole with no aircraft wreckage. They were lifted over the fence, and they were treated on the front lawn outside of the Pentagon where supposedly the aircraft came in. And the upper floors were not hit. There was no tail section. There were no engines, no nothing, zero, nada. And look on page 32 of the Pentagon Building Performance Report, and you'll see the missile exit on the outer ring at ground level.
What about the witnesses who said that they saw a plane fly into the Pentagon, that nobody reported seeing a missile?
There was no airplane. I mean, if you go over there and look at it, you can't fly an airplane in over that thing, leveled off and not hit the ground. There was absolutely, and you pull up the photographs, and there was no damage at all on the lawn. The fence was still standing the next day in front of the Pentagon, about 6 feet high, and supposedly this aircraft in it, there was no engines, no wreckage, no nothing or anything at all. Nothing, nada, never found. The hole was empty when the casualties were brought out of the hole before the upper floors collapsed. There was no impact on the upper floors with the tail section. If you laid the aircraft on the ground, it's almost about as high as the whole Pentagon.
So let me ask you this, Doug. Okay, so we know for a fact that 2 aircraft went into the Twin Towers. We can't dispute that, right? Okay, so the aircraft that is missing, was alleged to fly into the Pentagon that you say didn't, where's that aircraft now? What happened to the people on board?
I have no idea. I don't have any idea. I mean, I know enough guys and anybody in Black Ops that do whatever they're told, whenever they're told. So if that aircraft was out there, get it off the coast and shoot it out of the sky. Whoop-de-doo. Irrelevant.
Yeah, but wouldn't that show up on FAA radar?
No, who cares? They're not going to tell anything.
Why not? Why not?
I mean, the idea somehow that, all this stuff is, whatever's going on. I mean, when it all happened that morning. I mean, we had the warnings when that happened that morning. I was working with the United Nations, and we were responding with the United Nations. We're working on a contamination in the Balkans.
Right.
And I'm sitting in the office, and I said, oh, my God, it's all breaking loose. And I emailed them right away. And they said, yeah, everybody knew it was coming, and here's the warning message. We were all warned. And then we tried to contact. I called New York Emergency Services Unit and got in touch with them, said, okay, guys, this is what you need to do. This is what we trained you how to do it. This is how you need to respond, get everything set up. And it all fell apart. And so then the guys went up in the World Trade Center, and Willie led the guys up in there, and Bill and all those guys went up in there. And they're all sick, and then the explosions came and the buildings came on down. The most fascinating one is Building 7, where you look on the news and they say Building 7 has been destroyed at 5 o'clock and is still totally standing. And the Building 7 came down within seconds at 5:20. I mean, no damage or any fire. It was gone. It was blowing up and came down in rubble, just like a perfect detonation to destroy it.
It boggles my mind, Doug, that the government of the United States would conspire to kill so many citizens. Murder, all right? The government, if this is true, Doug, then why hasn't the government been charged with murder? Why hasn't George Bush...
Who's going to charge them? They're in charge. Who's going to charge them? Who's going to charge them?
If this
nobody is there to hold them accountable. Zero, nada.
Why not, though? Why not? When did the United States of America's government become so corrupt that they can get away with this?
I don't know. I'm not that old. I've been around everything, and what bothered me is when, you have to understand, what really triggered me is when I got assigned to clean up the depleted uranium mess. I was given the information I needed to start to clean up and ensure medical care was set up, and I did it. And then I was handed a copy of Los Alamos Memorandum, which ordered us to lie in our reports in order to avoid all liability and to allow them to always use uranium munitions for all things that they wanted to do. And then when I learned we couldn't clean it up and we didn't have the medical care available, and they didn't care about cleaning it up and didn't care to provide the medical care even though it was required, then I realized how evil it was.
Doug, how long have you and I known each other? Like we've had the Christmas shows together, which I love. Are we going to do one of those this year, Doug?
Yeah, the theater groups and everything have all collapsed. We lost our museum here, and the theater group doesn't have a home.
Oh, that's too
bad.
And
all this stuff, and some of the other ones have just gone. I mean, it was the most incredible experience we had when we did Miracle on 34th Street.
Oh, well, that was great.
Get all those people to believe, and I believe, and that was the most incredible performance.
So you and I go back a long time, right, Doug?
Probably 14, 15 years at least.
And I consider you to be a friend, and I believe Doug ROKKE, because I know your story. If anybody else in the world would have told me tonight what you told me, I would have told them they were nuts. But because it's you, Doug ROKKE, I'm saying, what in the name of God is going on?
You have to look at the whole thing. What you have to do is pull the stuff up yourself.
Yeah.
If you pull up the Pentagon Building Performance Report and you look at it, and the first picture says, here's the jet coming in. Well, it's a little dinky thing. It looks like just a fraction of the height of the building. But then you look at the dimensions of the aircraft and realize, oh, my God, that can't be it. And then you look at the sequence of the stuff, and you look at the pictures of the lot. No damage, fence standing, no thing. You can't put an aircraft 40-some feet high into a 7-foot vertical space.
How come in all the press coverage of the rescue attempts of the Twin Towers, the military is never mentioned?
Why would they?
Well,
when my guys went up there and I talked to them, and the guys that did, because I was tasked originally, the first thing, this was back in the 90s, the first tasking when we developed medical management, chemical biological casualty course, the first group that I taught was the New York Police and Fire Department Emergency Services Unit. These are the guys that went to the World Trade Center.
Right.
They're still sick to this day, and they can't get medical care. I mean, those guys are on film in a report saying the explosions went off as we raced out. I mean, Willie, one of my best friends, Willie was the last man out of the North Tower before it came down. He drove under a fire truck, and they rescued him like 4 or 5 hours later.
Hey, Doug, I hate to do this, old friend, but you and I have to say so long for now. I'd like to get you back on because I want to cover this story. I want to get the facts out there, and if there's anyone who can help me do it, it's you, Doug. What do you say?
There's a whole bunch. We did a major conference at the University of Wisconsin some years ago.
Yeah.
They brought all the experts in, and it was an incredible thing, and it was all there, and it was all laid out.
Maybe it's time.
Let's not talk about it.
Maybe it's time we talk about it again. Doug ROKKE, thank you very much, Doug. Take care of yourself. God bless you, my friend. Regards to your family, and I look forward to the next time you and I meet to talk about this and much more.
Thanks, Rob.
No, thank you, sir. Exonation, the one and only Major Doctor Doug ROKKE has been my guest this hour. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.